Look at us. Peace and greetings. Shalom, Anu. Yes,
Shabbat shalom, Anu.
Shabbat shalom. We are live. This is awesome. So, welcome to Shema Anu. Right now, we are Akyot Anu. You have Sister Maksha, Sister Deidre behind me. We have Emma Precious, and as well, Sister Kashia. Yes, we are here to present Shema Anu, for you all. First and foremost, we like to give thanks to the Most High, as well as Chief Yuya for opening up this space for us to share this special moment with you. So, as you know, as always, we're going to begin with the preface. And this is just an excerpt from the preface from the Anu Way. This book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this word with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is to be deliberated. And that, of course, is from our Chief Judna, Chief Yuya. Okay? And we will be continuing with our family chapter. Last strong, we were with Brother Aki and Antonio. And he was, y'all laughing at me? It's scary. Aki, Antonio. And we were talking about children.
Yes, so we're still in the family section, and of course this is the second paragraph under the focus on children. And so what we normally do after reading the preface is to look at the entire passage. So we'll read through that for you, and then we will go line by line, as our other dear sisters, you know, they really work through the passage, so we'll do that as well too. So I'll begin with, the first sentence. There may be times that an individual comes into a courtship with children from previous marriages. If the father of those children is still present, he should retain possession of his children before the mother enters into a new relationship. A man rules over his household, so a woman coming into a homestead will have to assimilate to the cultural perspective and desires of the master of the home. The children the woman may be taking care of is doing so for the father of those children. How can a man pour refinement into children who are already under the spiritual covering of another man? It is a disregard rather to the father of those children. It is important for a man to properly vet the situation, as in many cases, a prospective woman will immediately tell you that the father is not involved in the lives of the children or is ambivalent to the welfare of them. Do not be fooled. Don't be fooled. If possible, speak to the man yourself. Children should always be raised under the righteous ruling of their blood father. So that's the full reading. And so you see it's very chunky, it's very hefty, and it leans on greatly on the focus on children and culture, right? We could pull out a few words: children, culture. We see hierarchy here. We see patriarchy here. So, during our discussion today, we will pose a few questions and we would like for you to respond in the chat as well. If you can hear us, let us know in the comment section, please, just so that way we can keep track of what's happening. But we can start. Let's just jump right in. Do you want us to get the questions? Share the questions first.
Yes. So in the beginning, so yeah, right. So it says there may be times that an individual comes into a courtship with children from previous marriages. So that's the overarching idea of what we're speaking of in this chapter here. So next we go on to if the father of those children is still present, he should retain possession of his children before the mother enters into a new relationship. So when I was reading this, I felt like, wow, this is very controversial, and I can't see all the way, but I do see that Chief Yuya said that this is a difficult section of the book, and I totally agree because it's like, are women going to be reluctant to give up their children once they enter into a new relationship? And that leads us into the question that we have. And that first question is, women, would you be reluctant to give up your children to be reared by their father when you enter into another relationship? And for the men, the question is, if your children are not in the household, what steps are you taking to retain possession of those children?
And I mean, we can back up and even look at the first sentence that discusses the idea of coming into a courtship with children from a previous marriage. So right here, we have to acknowledge that there's honesty and authentic engagement immediately, because you're not coming with a cat in a bag and you don't realize. I'm sorry, I said it. I said it. And then you put it to the side, which is what happens when you're dating, right? So if you're dating, children tend to be the last thing that you talk about, because there's no vision, there's no intention in the mating or whatever it is that people do when they describe dating. But if you're courting, all of these things are upfront, right? All of the additional children, whether they have a relationship with their father, all of those things that's important to put on the table. You know, I don't know what you want to share on that.
No, I totally agree, but I see what we have a mixed crowd, and I know typically Sister Kashia, she's always writing and chat and ready to answer the questions and things. We have a 20-second delay with the on the chat, but we have our sisters here in person. So I wanted to pose a question to you all in order to give you a chance to respond, only because we have some sisters who do have children right now and others who don't. So Sister Kashia, can you give me your perspective of how you would feel if you were in that position?
Well, I don't have children at the moment, but if I were in that position, I would know that I'm aligning with the righteous culture, and within that culture, it is a patriarchal culture, and that means that father is that head, that instructor. So as a woman, I would have to align with that, knowing that within obedience, my children have to be in the direction of their father, and I would have to put aside my own personal feelings or that sense of non-possessiveness in order to do what is lawful and beneficial to the children.
That's I totally understand that, and going through this, I was thinking about the situation between Tom and Sheba in Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships by Chief Yuya. And in the story of Tom and Sheba, she has her cultural ideas were different from his, and she was very reluctant to share that with him. And didn't, when she became pregnant, she was like, well, how do I approach this? Because he's not the type of man that's going to bring up the children how I want them to. Now, ultimately, she would be out of alignment because, of course, she would need to be coming under his guidance and his leadership. But she was like, no, I want my children to learn this and this and that and these cultural and this African cultural upbringing, but you're more focused on just more of Babylon values almost. So if the father of that child is that way, then how do you feel just giving them up and say, well, he's the lead, so I have to just let them go with him.
But so the answer to that is actually in the following sentences, because there's a clear highlighting of whose culture she will be moving under.
Because
right?
what does it say? It says a man rules over his household. So a woman coming into a homestead will have to assimilate to the cultural perspective and desires of the master of that home. You know what I mean? So that's right in alignment.
And culture is really important, right? Because you identified that there could be a rift or a division, right? When you said the children who belong to the father, that is his legacy, right? That's his legacy. And it's interesting. Chief Yuya teaches on the spiritual and divine authority, actually, that passes on through the father or from the father onto and into the children, the son, right? So it's really important to see that it isn't just about whether they're able to stay with the father or not. There's a spiritual aspect to it, and there is that bloodline. That's very important, and we'll get to that toward the end. I feel like we're talking about all of the things that would be a bit preemptive, but
I would like to ask Emma Precious if you can touch on that question just a little bit to give us your perspective on how you would feel or approach that situation.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, we've of course read and studied the On Your Way extensively, and so this is something that I've given lots of thought to. First read, my response was, I gotta do what? I would say a year and a half, 18 months later, the reality is that I honor the process. And so the priority would be to ensure that my children are under the headship of their father. That said, I think that there are sometimes resistance by some fathers to take that role on. But ultimately, it's a discussion that has to be had, and one that, let's see, how would I say? It's a discussion that has to be had, and something that we really have to be had.
Sorry.
I just didn't want y'all to have that feedback.
Oh man.
So, yeah. So essentially, that's my response for the most part. But the thing that, while I was listening to you all kind of broach this question, the thing that I thought about is just the women that are referenced in the text as, kind of saying, well, no, the father isn't even involved, or who are reluctant, as I was in the beginning upon reading it, who say, well, why? The why is probably because who we have chosen to mate with, it wasn't, you weren't entering into that process with any sort of righteousness in mind. And so therefore now, when you're faced with, okay, well, those are his children, he should rear them, there's this fervent, drive towards, no, absolutely not, because he is not perhaps Anu, right? And so he's not going to raise them in a righteous culture. But then there's also that dichotomy, because then what will the children receive when they do spend time with their father, and you try to deposit certain things into them when under righteous ruling? How is that even going to work? So I do see why that line in particular, why this whole paragraph was placed here. It's really appropriately fitted. Yeah.
It is appropriate. I felt it very controversial and in alignment with Chief Yuya said. So we're going to go to the chat for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we didn't have Sister Kashia to say like, share, and comment, subscribe. So we're gonna say that.
Right, you can say
Like, comment, and share.
Yeah. So Chief Yuya said this is a difficult section of the book for Western-minded people to accept. Many are stuck in a mindset that children are the possession of the mother, as promoted by Western psychopathic thought. Indeed. Peace to all of you all who have joined us in the chat. Thank you for letting us know that you can hear and see us. Chief also says, once you say their children, you already know the answer. The children are the father's. He has the best chance for emotional and cultural stability. She'll be morphed by any new man she comes under. And that's so true. I mean, because, I mean, okay, I'll speak for myself. It's like, because you do, if you are obedient and submissive, then you will be following the lead of that man you come under, and that would just be the righteous thing to do. You don't want to be in order to build a family, in order to have a family, you have to have the same values, the same mores, and the same principles. And if not, then that will cause that great imbalance within that household. Because children are already they may have to succumb to the imbalances of the environment that they are in. So, for instance, if they're not homeschooled, for instance, if all the things that we spoke about in Shema last year, the things that are effective within in a relationship and with the children in that relationship, if they don't have that proper rearing, then they won't be successful.
And I think it's maybe we're getting ahead. I'll leave some for later because I'm about to, just identify how, the opposing cultures kind of breeds imbalance, right? Because then two cultures can sit in the same space. One will take over the other, and the one that doesn't lead there will be some resentment there. And of course the resentment we're talking about is not the culture itself, but the person who the mother or the father who wants a particular culture to be dominant, if you understand. So there will always be some sort of feeling, some sort of imbalance actually, and that's going to show up in the child. It will show up in children. So, and the household as well too. Because that kind of creeps into the new relationship. It will creep into the new relationship. And feel free to jump in and share. Feel free to jump in and share. So we placed the two questions in the chat. We have a question for the women, and that question is highlighted, so I don't think I have to read it. And we posted a question for the men as well, and I'll select it soon so that way you can see on screen and respond to it. We are at the third sentence, right?
We are. Well, we spoke of the man who's over his household, so women coming up to the homestead will have to assimilate to the culture perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
And I did want to say a little bit about culture, and you have probably heard over and over and over again about the necessity of culture. Culture is how we do things, right? Mm-hmm. And it makes up the fabric of a homestead or a home. So if you have one, just imagine being in a space where you're given one set of directions, and then you're living off of that, and then you move into a new space and you're given a new set of directions. It becomes a split camp. Let's just say that. Yeah. And I've heard Emma Precious and Sister Deidre mention that many times before, this idea of split camp. And for those of you who are probably wondering, well, where are we getting some of this from? Some of this is being pulled from another piece that Chief Yuya has written, which is Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships. And so in there you'll find a lot. It really speaks to the effects of that type of split camp or opposing cultures. Yeah. But culture is the fabric of the homestead. And so if you have children living one way and then they're trying to figure out how to live another way, it just becomes very confusing. And then you lose grip on your youth, right? Because then you can't influence them, you can't guide them, you can't, because they're gonna be like, well, you don't even know what you want, because first we're here, then we're over there, and then my father wants this for me, but you are the woman and you're now trying to usurp the man's position, take over and decide, okay, this is.
And I was going to add, what happens when you have that split camp and everyone there's what mother is saying and what father is saying. What happens is it leaves a rift. Remember, it's in a split camp. So that void in the middle is that space where the world comes in and says, do this. Yeah. And it kind of leaves you vulnerable, leaves the youth vulnerable and open to all of the madness that is outside, that, you know, where they could go be led astray into the things that are unrighteous and just not what they should be doing. Like, how many times do we, you know, listen when we hear about things going wrong in certain communities? It's like, well, we're the parents, you know, and it's usually a split camp. So, you know, and that's not to say that that is the case for everyone, but there's, you know, a high number of that happening. So we, you know, it's important to recognize, like, if we're going to create unconsciously, these are the consequences of that.
And you know, when you say creating unconsciously, it has me thinking, especially someone who's unmarried without children, really being mindful and adhering to, you know, something like the courting process because of the fact that the father is the head and the children are the father. So it makes you more mindful when considering who I'm to be complimentary to and just being more righteous in that selection.
Yeah, and so perfect, right? Because what I was thinking about, right, is the idea of cautionary tales, right? So I'm the mama of this right, group, if you will, or the mama in this group. And so as I listen to this, I think, man, my will is that everyone listening, every woman, every man listening, every male and every female who strives to be women and men listening to this, really take heed, because you don't want to be in a position where you are creating a split camp, where you have a cross-cultural union, because it's going to be it's going to be full of confusion. And confusion for two adults is one thing, but when you're bringing, unconsciously, you're creating these children with no expectation, no set idea in your mind of what it is that you're trying to form and why, because there is no history even with the individual in some cases, that you're even entering into that union, because it is a union. With what you then create is what we're discussing. So the only thing that I wanted to say is just, I implore you to take it seriously. Like, really think about what you're doing and why. Why dating is not what we do. Just think about how long we've been in family. Like, you know, like, because we've been in family, right? But you know what? When you think about it, and we're coming towards the end of family, but the reality is the family is everything, right? The family is how you even begin to imagine the reality of community. So it's like you almost can't have community without family. So with that, pay attention. Take this seriously. Don't have to be the mama who has to say, well, yeah, I would have to allow my children to be with their father. Expect that you are with your master and that what you're doing together is creating family that will not be divided or split. So.
Indeed.
And I wanted to encourage all of us to speak up a little bit louder. I'm just going to say it so that we project our voices, because as I'm listening, I'm hearing you sound soft.
Okay. That means I have to yell.
It's pertinent that we remember our hierarchical model, you know, and this we do follow a patriarchy system. And so if you are in alignment with that, then you definitely want to follow that. Yes, we are following the divine knowledge from the Elohim down to the father, then to the mother, you know, and unto the children. So if a woman is in that position, then she would, if in alignment, then she will be following that same model. And then there wouldn't be a question of how I should move forward from this point on.
Because it's clear, you know, it's clear, like the steps. And I think that's the amazing thing. If you really, when you dig into the Anu way, even when you dig into biblical law, right? The path is clear. And it's clearly laid out, and you're told exactly what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and who should do what. And it even gives the whys and what comes after. So it's just really important, and that's why, you know, that preface speaks to reading every day and discussing this work with your people and, dissecting it among your sisters and brothers. There's a reason for each of those steps because that's almost like the digestive process. You can't just swallow your food whole and expect to get what you need from it. You really, you might die.
Chew on that.
So you gotta allow that breakdown to begin, right? And to continue and allow the body, which is your community, to help you break down and digest and process and then act upon what you've taken in. So it's a whole process, y'all. Welcome.
And there's so many connections. I wanted to just add to some a bit of what you shared when it comes to authority and even Bereshit. And Chief Uriah breaks this down when he discusses in the 4-part series on Genesis, Bereshit. We see how that line of authority, as you said, moves from Elohim to Adam. Yeah. And Adam is charged with, being steward of the garden, which can be equivalent to the household, right? Or the homestead, charged with naming animals and having dominion over them, right? So we see that, and we see that that's a kingdom. So the homestead is a kingdom, and therefore that man is master of his home and is able to share the culture and dictate. Yeah, I'm sorry, you may not like it, but that's the reality. Because when we talk about patriarchy, we're speaking about the man having the vision and the connection with Elohim to decipher what is to be shared with family, right? I think we need to jump to the chat a little bit.
Yeah,
Let's see. I see that.
Oh, yes.
Something.
I see you. With the
So the next, as Brother Antonio says, we should also highlight the concept that sexual intercourse institutes marriage, not the Western sense of a wedding, being the thing that binds the man and woman with one another. So with that said, I don't even know if we touched on that line or if it was said before, but just being very conscientious of who you mate with.
Yeah.
Yes. You know what I mean? Like, just don't want to be out there willy-nilly and mating with someone who you wouldn't want to actually rear your children. The goal is not to be, not to have someone else be that parent, but being in a household that is secure in a righteous union, where this wouldn't even be an issue. We didn't have to be talking about it, right?
But to Aki Antonio's point, in addition, Aki Antonio makes a really good point. Sex is marriage. Mm-hmm. So whether you have that experience and you don't get pregnant and there isn't a child soon coming or not, sex is marriage. That is a covenant. And I know that we touched on that in the past. My sister right here and I touched on that in the past. There's a covenant, and you can go back and listen to that chat to just hear about what that covenant represents and what a covenant truly is, or that contract or that agreement. That's major. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself, right?
And you know what? This is why, because when we're speaking, like we're saying sex is marriage, right? And this is why it's important to identify your culture, be defining, know what your culture is, and have one. Because if you don't, what do we also learn from solutions? One will be chosen for you.
Yes.
And so what happens a lot of the times, people may think like, well, we planned our baby, we planned, having children, but planned by what authority, like what culture were you under when you planned? Were you a god of Babylon? And like what Babylon says, the goals and exceptions and things that people should reach for. Yeah. So if that's the case, then what are you really reaching for? Because then what happens is, then when you have that split camp, the same, drama ensues, because there was no culture that you chose for yourself that was righteous. You were just moving by what everybody else did do.
Right.
And you have to be accountable for your choices. So if you choose or select, and in choosing and selecting, you decide you want to separate from that union, you have to realize that you chose,
Yeah.
and maybe in choosing you chose wrong. So that's really important to consider. And if that's the case, then you still chose a master or a head, and you should be in alignment with that head, even though you feel like you want traditional African spiritual systems, or you want something else for your youth, and you think, okay, well, the best thing is what you think is right, then you're wrong, right? It's you are being pulled into the homestead, or pulled into the cultural perspective of the man, and so that's it.
And that goes to that assimilation aspect
Yes.
that was mentioned into that, and that requires that aspect of submission as well too. So
Top tier speakers. She says, if I was in that particular situation, I would follow what the culture says, so I would not be reluctant. And for sure, it all goes back to bloodline for me. And I just had a thought about being a scattered people, and that's one of the reasons. Like when we are separated in our families, when we're not having biological fathers raise their children, and now we all have to find our way back home.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if we make sure that they're under their righteous guide, if they're under their righteous bloodline, then we won't have to be working to get home. We'll just be working on building further and building more families and being stronger. You know. Chief Yuya comes with be accountable for the choices you make, even if you have a history of poor choices. It's wicked to strip a child from their paternal authority because you think your perspective is superior. So women using the whole idea of they like to dangle the children in front of the father. This is my child, and it's almost like a weapon. Say, well, if you don't give me this, if you don't do that, then I'm not going to let you see your child. And if they don't understand pretty much how much they really are hindering that child's growth, how much they are harming that child, it's all about it's just about what's mine is mine, what's yours ain't yours because I got it, and what are you going to do to attain it?
With that, it's not even an idea of thinking that your way is better. It's actually just you parroting what every television show, everything in Western culture tells you is yours, which we know is incorrect. And so oftentimes, number one, many of the women that are the way you are, females that are the way you describe Sister Manera, they don't care, much less think about what's being impacted because they're only thinking and caring about themselves, right? And it doesn't take some high level of consciousness to recognize that. It could be two Western females, one that actually just cares about their children a little bit more, that wouldn't choose that path. But I think that's a really good observation, the idea that you're weaponizing your offspring, right? Or really that man's offspring. So you're using what he's created against him, which is actually really sick when you think about it, if you give it some thought. Yeah.
And it's sad because it's done because society actually says that that's okay.
Yes.
And women are rewarded.
They glorify it, yes.
They are rewarded for that.
There's a bounty, right? It's called child support. So there are financial incentives
Remove the
to
man.
ensure.
Right.
But I know we have a lot in this
I
chat.
know,
So
I know.
let's try to get through it.
In a way.
We won't talk.
I'll try to. So in Maquanda, she says, if I was in a situation, I would definitely first communicate with the dad before I make any decision to introduce my children to my current head. Okay. I like that. Sham the Joy. Peace, everyone. Yo, hey, y'all. I am not yet a mother, so I can only speculate, but as of now, my answer is no. I have already seen the effect of the father not being present in the marriage, and clearly it does not work. Mhm.
If we can, I wanted to just go back to Sister Kwanda's comment for a minute. So it says if I was in this situation, I would definitely, first communicate with the dad before I make my decision to introduce my children to my current head. You shouldn't even have a current head. These discussions need first happen with the person you're considering courtship with or exploring courtship with. And please, everyone here and virtually, correct me if I'm misunderstanding anything, but it would be more than appropriate for that discussion to happen within the courtship dynamic. But the fact that we are watching this and reading the On the Way, this is a discussion that should be had now, right?
Yes.
Before the courtship,
Okay.
for anyone watching.
But that leads us into the next line.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like
Perfect segue.
I wanted to add, I can't help but to join you in just, like dissecting it a little bit, because the phrase "before I make any decision" is it pivots on the secular world.
Me,
Yeah.
my children.
And it's almost like a planning. You're
Right.
setting
Strategic.
yourself up to
Yeah.
be in that situation.
Right.
If you are, if you don't have any children right now, then the plan should be to create consciously a family and building up that unit with your mates and under his headship for life. It shouldn't be like a planning to so some trick question, right? There shouldn't be a planning. There shouldn't be a planning for that to happen.
But if you're in that situation, remember, you're not making the decision.
That's right.
Okay, because what do we read? It is important for the man to properly vet the situation, as in many cases, a prospective woman will immediately tell you that the father is not involved in the lives of the children or is ambivalent to the welfare of them. Do not be fooled.
And
Do not be fooled.
we can go back to the chat. Sister Quia does say perhaps that should be in place beforehand.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely. Give thanks, Uma. Yeah.
Okay, so where are we? You want to see and Brother Antonio?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. So Brother Antonio asks Ahokashia Kwanda a question. Pardon. Whose children are they? The wording of your comments already presupposes that these children are yours and you have the ultimate say in their futures. New warrior scholars, nothing cannot go past.
Right. All of our antenna went up. Our collective antennae went up.
Chief says, would you accept qualifying to be a junior wife, concubine, only because a man may not want to share authority over her with her past lover or build an economy, someone caring for a man's children?
Yeah.
Because, and we actually have a note at the bottom to speak about that, because, and I think we spoke about it a little before, there will be a rift. There will be a rift because now you're pouring into, right? And you're trying to reform someone, another person's child, and they have an authority, they have some divine authority that trickles down to them that is separate from, another man. So it becomes, I think that's where some of that imbalance comes in too. It's almost like a forcing of wanting
And Sister Mamsha, they have bloodline. They have blood.
Yes.
Right?
Of
So
course.
that's that divine authority that you're referencing. When we're making these choices, we need to make them consciously, because if you're one of those women, whether in reality or if I were in this position, you would want to make sure that you're choosing to enter into enter into courtship with someone that you know you would want to then have this life experience with. If not, keep them close.
That's why the power of choice is very much important and for the women.
Yeah. All right, so if you're here with us, let's hit like and share. Let's hit all those buttons. But I am definitely interested in hearing what the men have to say in regards to the second question. I sure hope it's more than Chief and Brother Antonio here with us.
I wanted to jump to, because I do, Sister Kwanda mentioned that there was some confusion, and that was several minutes ago, over 10 minutes ago, so please forgive us. It's 5 of us,
Where do you see that?
So I'll highlight it. I'm confused. Sister Kwanda says, I'm confused if hypothetically the children are in the home, would I not have to discuss with the father of the children first about my new mate? Or would it just connect my mate to their children? Or would I just connect my mate to their father? Sorry.
Okay.
So I guess I'll start with my piece of the answer since I started dissecting the question. Your mate. So you jumped to being mated, but as we've gone through Shema, and I know we're all reading the Honor Way, there's a lot that happens before you get a mate. I want to say we've been about how many weeks? Like almost 3 months.
31 weeks, 32. 32,
Right,
32,
right.
and it's
So-
actually more than 32.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are many strongs worth of discussion, and what I'm saying is we're talking about courtship, right? Which is at least 9 months. We're talking betrothal, which is at least 9 months. We're talking, coming up with the contracts, and all of these things are happening way before you have an actual mate. So I think the confusion is maybe the connection with where things fall in that timeline.
Right.
These things would need to be discussed during courtship, disclosed even maybe perhaps even before the brother even agrees to enter into courtship with you, because maybe he doesn't even want to court a woman who has children.
Right.
So hopefully that sheds some light.
And within a righteous, within our new, that hypothetical situation would even occur. Right. Yeah.
Right, and that goes back to the don't plan to be in that situation.
Right.
By even uttering that, it's kind of like subconsciously planning to be there.
Right.
So Chief's response, Chief says, if your children are not in your household, they are no longer your possession. What you husband over is what you're master over. Summer visits and strong ends do not constitute right ruling. Yeah, nothing needs to be added to that statement. Not necessarily.
Period.
Period. So I think we could skip through some of these. I don't know what you think. She says, I would add on to what Aki Antonio has shared. If you take on a new man, there should be no communication with your old head, regardless of children. Your current head should coordinate with him.
We must be mindful not to step into masculine roles and things that are meant for our head to be doing.
And that's in alignment with the next sentence, actually our final sentence. If possible, speak to the man yourself. Children should always be raised under the righteous ruling of their blood father. And just going back to what you were saying, Kwanda, that confusion is just because you're trying to take on the role of a man. Those two men need to have that conversation amongst each other, because they'll be able to understand each other and be able to come to a righteous agreement that I need to be ruling over my children because they need to come under my culture. It is not would be right. It would not be your decision.
Okay, I actually wanted to. Sister Shirley says, she will it's possible that she would be reluctant. But she says, I would have to ask myself why. Is it out of guilt? Is it because of my past poor choices or views of my needs? Okay, and Chief actually responds to Sister Shirley. He says it's about doing what's correct, which allows you to live more righteously. But those Babylon or Babylonian concepts are an affront to nature. It's not about patriarchy, it's about right order.
Yeah, I think that's always a good clue that you're on the right path. That you're on the right path, but you may be making a not wise decision, is when you're walking or receiving righteous guidance, but there's something in you that says, yeah, that I know this is right, but I don't want to do it. But but I can't trust, or I don't know, that's not what they told me. You have to remember that everything is, as Chief has said so many times, if it's being given to you on a platter, assume that it's flipped upside down and perhaps inside out and dovetailed. Okay? Kind of put that in there. And it's just wrong. Like, not only do you have to clean it, you need to sanitize it, flip it on the right way, and really examine what you've been taught, what you've been shown, what you've been told. And again, I'm really speaking to those who, men and women, females and males, who do not have children. You don't have to make these mistakes.
Right.
So that's the cool part for y'all.
So I think about, Chief was speaking about Adama and raising Cain, but I was thinking about the actual meaning of son and daughter in Hebrew. So son meaning as Ben the builder, and then daughter being Ba. So when I think about building, it's like, how can you actually build onto the bloodline if you're under another man's head? He may not be your family. I mean, just because they look like you, don't mean that they are of your bloodline. So it won't produce anything that's righteous, And then the daughter, what is she doing? She's going out, she's branching out into another household. But when she branches out, she needs to be taking the correct tools and the proper tools from her father and take that into that another household. What she brings is what another man, another head, another master is looking for. So if she doesn't have those tools, then she quite possibly may not be made, and she won't be on that list, that hierarchy list of this is who I want. She won't be chosen, even though we do the choosing sometimes. But
And
yeah.
I think Chief has said, like, this is where the sons are the builders. They go out and nation build.
Yeah.
They build up, right?
Yeah.
And the women, we are expanding. So if we are all coming from the same culture, your families are unifying, and that woman is expanding the family. Like, she's coming from one and expanding that by then branching onto the other. So we have to think about it in those terms, and it's not like this complete separation. And that's why it's important that your culture be shared with who you're meeting with.
Right.
And that those children are coming in and through that culture. Because even sticking with what Sister Manira just shared about but the idea is the branch. But think about what Western culture will tell you to do. Take that branch off that tree.
Go off and build
take it somewhere else. But what happens to a broken limb? What happens to a branch that's fallen to the right? It no longer can fulfill any purpose because it's been severed from its source. So something to think about.
I like that.
I'm coming up with some things.
Severed from its source.
Chief Yuya says you can be a Dama raising Cain who murders your Abel. That old school stepping in and raising another man's seed, like the movie Pauline, was a mind control tactic to keep men from building empires. Shirla, is it because of some masculine energy being displayed? When entering into a way of life that is patriarchal, you have to accept that responsibility and let westernized thoughts, actions that prevent you from living in a righteous culture. Let it go.
Yes, let it go. Yes. You can't hold on to it.
Right. Brother Antonio adds, oftentimes it's a power trip because the female who would dangle a man's children in his face like that knows she has a stake back in her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what he said. It's incentivized,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately.
But that, not but, and that goes back to who is the disruptor, right? Who is the disruptor? And the disruptor, Chief has broken that down. I think we're bringing in all sorts of things in here, but the disruptor is that energy, that element that gets in the way of the man being and maintaining rulership over family. And once you remove the head, you said it, I'm looking back, right? Ima Precious said it before, the body, right? What can the body really do without an actual head? And so, yeah, the state steps in and severs that tie and that union and that connection. It's the disruptor, right? It is like the serpent in the garden. There's that separating from what is the will of Yah. And so then you're moving off of, again, just what the state says, but that's only because you get to usurp the man's position, right? You get to, and sometimes I think someone said it before. Some women select beta males because you can rule over them, and ultimately they know they can rule over them and ultimately make decisions.
Which is so lopsided, right? Because what you're not realizing in seeking out and pursuing a beta male is it's affirming the beta in you.
Yeah.
Because it's forcing you to step outside of what your contours and your form should be, right? Because once you choose a beta, you're assuming, I believe, that perhaps you're an alpha, but an alpha female, an alpha woman is none of the things that you're choosing to be if you're out there looking for a beta male.
And that's that lopsidedness that you were speaking of in the westernized community. It's like we were always told that an alpha woman is one who goes out there and gets it and she's making it happen. You know what I mean? When in actuality, she's acting like she's taking on the role of a man. So that doesn't make you an alpha woman. It just makes you not in a line, right?
Let's keep moving.
Okay, we're at Julia. He's responding to Sister Sherla. And he said this about doing what's correct.
Oh, we went through that already.
Okay.
We're all the way down to Antonia, 850.
Page 50?
It's probably page 50.
Right. Okay, peace, Brother Zach. All right, well, we have some more men who joined us. I would love to hear your perspective or a response to the question that was posed.
Do we post the questions for the ones?
We will have to repost it.
It's cool.
So, you got it?
Yeah, I will.
All right, well, I'm going to say it on loud then.
It's fine, I got it. Okay.
So she's going to put it back in the chat. But the question was, for the men, if your children are not in your household, what steps are you taking to retain possession of your children? If you have them. If you have them.
So we can go to the chat.
No,
Yes.
yeah, we gotta go back to the chat because it's just a lot. We're always already at the 1 hour mark. We want to get all of this.
You find it? I can jump in. You want me to jump in?
information
So Brother Antonio says, "You ain't my daddy."
Oh, that's that song.
You ain't my daddy. I don't know if I got it. Right. Took on new meaning after reading this section.
That's from Baby's.
Yeah, we are losing
Dying.
power.
Okay. Do not mind what you're going to see. You're going to see a little bit of back of the
It's all right.
the staging area. It's okay though. It's
all
okay.
right.
We're in the age of COVID. We're just going to keep on going. We're going to keep on pushing,
So
and we're going to make it work. All right, let's think fast now.
Yes.
How we going to get this?
But
We're
we'll
gonna
keep
have to-
going.
We can turn this on.
There's time.
We'll keep going.
You can turn that on. We're going to keep going through the chat.
Right. So Brother Antonio says took the phrase that I just read took on new meaning after reading this section. Children know who their authority is, but they are raised to focus instead on who they should consider to be their father. And she says, oh, I think this is when you spoke about women using children.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, that's how far we are.
Wow.
Yes, it's 9:05 now. So she says, "Ooh, Manira went there. Just Chief and Antonio on the speak up. It's okay. My brother and I will keep flexing on mental muscles. We're both accepting courtship papers." So Brother Loda Scholar says, in response to the question posed in the chat, he says, "I will say, depending on the woman and the situation, I think I would have to assess the situation where my children have accepted Western culture and the fight is worth fighting to get them." Okay, I'll read that again. Are we good? Are we settled?
That's
Wonderful.
So I'm gonna get to mine, but it's
So Brother Lowe's response is, I will say, depending on the woman and the situation, I think I would have to assess the situation where my children have accepted Western culture and the fight is worth fighting to get them. So we'll keep moving. Sister Kuya says, Sham the Joy dropped the mic, y'all.
It's good coming from DJ.
Right?
Yes.
So Sister Akuya says, my grandfather raised 2 children that were not his, and he insisted on having full authority without the father being involved. Would this be acceptable within Anu if the biological father isn't really present? So I will look out for some of the responses to that question in the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in
It's in
or share. All right, good. Zach, it's in there?
Uh-huh.
All right, good. Brother Zach says, so why are the children not in the house? Sorry, I'm late. So if this was discussed, please disregard. No, it wasn't discussed. That's a really good question, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I think we're thinking about. You know, even with Sister Kwanda's question, why is that the situation in the first place, right? Sham the Joy says the children are not in the house because the mother and father have parted, and he has chosen a new mate. All right. Chief shares that that was a different era that Sister Akuya was speaking of. Right, I concur. Your grandmother, he's saying your grandmother knew she had little choice as the feminists had decimated her womanhood, had not decimated her womanhood yet. Today, many females with children are haughty and delusional. Pause. Right.
Let it settle in, right? Let it settle.
Okay, I'll take this off the screen now. I'll keep moving. We're at the 8:57 mark. Yeah, so we are late. So Chief also responds to Akuya and says, no man in his right mind wants a woman with children. If he accepts her into his home by grace, he is not going to negotiate for power when he's already in the seat of power. Mic drop again. All right. Brother Antonio says, right, Hima Precious, take that branch and take it. I can't even read. Take it to another tree and force it to bear apples when it came from an orange tree. Okay, there you go.
See, you get it. You get it, Aki. Now they're orange.
The man should, she says the man should be careful nowadays for a woman who is attempting to offload her children onto him. She's trying to offload responsibility. Even if she's a widow, the search for why must happen. Mic drop again. This is
going to be a continuous mic drop.
Right.
Keep it on the ground.
All right, I'm pulled up.
You're crying. All right.
I can take some for you.
Okay, sure.
In Makwanda, she says, Toda Hoti, I do not plan on getting into this kind of ordeal, but I will go back and watch the videos from the previous drones so that I am clear on doing what's correct for courting and mating. And that is absolutely perfect. You know, that's why we're here. We're all in the process of transformation and reform, and this is indeed a journey, and we don't want it to end because what? Perfection is death.
What additional clarity do you need, Sister Wanda? What are some cloudiness in your understanding of this that we're sharing?
All right. And while we're waiting for that response, I'll go on to Emma Okoye. She says, what would be the woman's role when a man's children are in the household from another woman? What would be the woman's role when a man's children are in the household from another woman? Would she assist her mate the same? Would the same apply? Oh, listen, child, you're making me sound crazy because I'm like, what's this? I'm like, would the same apply a woman not wanting a man with children? Whatever household that you
Who's the master of the household?
Right.
First of all,
Yes.
calm yourself down.
Yeah.
I'm about to read it.
You're like, we had to work y'all out.
I think we have to remember. Okay, so we have discussed this very early on.
Yes.
Women are desired.
Yes.
Men are needed. So there's your answer right in that. So it's not about what we want. And this is not to say that there are not wants and needs, but needs come before wants, right? You know, when you're moving on wants, that's how you pick a beta. You know, so there has to be, you know, some intention behind, you know, your choosing. And not just like, oh, I want it because it looks good, or I want it because he looks good and he says nice things to me, and you know that all is nice and it comes, but like, what is that household going? You know, what is being built, and how can you contribute to that?
Add value.
Add
Try
that
to
value.
convince otherwise.
So the short answer is a woman's role never changes.
Right.
You would continue to be that woman, be submissive and obedient to the culture that he was already
However
set
he
for.
chooses fit. So
Right.
if he wants you to only cook for those kids on Tuesdays,
I said, get you a cook.
And here's another thing: then don't enter into courtship with a man. with a
right.
boyfriend.
That choice, that initial choice, is always choices in each of the stages in this layers. So
Yeah, but you know, if you're entering into a courtship and you know that they're children, why wouldn't you want to be helpmeet?
Right.
It's your role. You nurture.
right.
You impart the culture that is given to you by your head. You impart to the youth.
Right.
So you want to make sure that that's maintained. That will be your purpose in that relationship, or maybe it's just a.
Well, and you know, something to think about, just, and I know we're pulling this question apart,
Right.
but the thing about it is to ask, well, would the same thing apply to the woman? If we're going back to the sheet of the paragraph that was read, we start by acknowledging, or Chief begins by acknowledging that the children should be with the father. So any woman who is entering into or considering courtship with a man who has children should best well know that those children will be under his headship, or else he is not functioning as a righteous man.
Right.
Right? So, well, I wouldn't say he isn't functioning as a righteous man, because there could be circumstances where he's wiped the slate clean and doesn't have those children and wouldn't have those children. And Chief has expounded on that as well.
Yeah.
But we should expect to want and accept the fact that that would be the role that you're stepping into. And like Sister Maksha said, why would you not want that role, to nurture and cultivate those youth under righteous headship?
We have to be mindful of not, when it comes to situations of men, not to say or think in the realm of, well, what about me? Or can I do that too? Because that can be a sign of, rebelliousness and operating in that masculine energy still.
And Chief Yuya's response to that is different. A man injects himself into all and covers all. She doesn't do that. His other children are a part of his responsibility. She would assist him how he directed her to.
So do we want to, probably gonna continue with the reading, because we do have to get in.
I thought we finished.
No, we didn't. We didn't get through all of the sentences and break down all parts. But we could continue with the chats for now.
No, I thought we
What
finished.
you said?
It was like a lot of different.
What's that?
Yeah, we've just been. I said the lines. Stay in now. I think we did miss this one.
Yes. So, which one is that?
Okay.
Oh yes. How can a man pour? So we'll jump back to the version 9. we get away, right? So we'll jump back to the reading, and the phrase that we're reading from, the sentence is, how can a man pour refinement into children who are already under the spiritual covering of another man? It is a disregard to the father of those children. And so, that speaks a little bit to cultures being in opposition to each other, right? And, just I guess reiterating again, two cultures can't exist in the same space. They can't. There will be that battle. There will be a battleground, and one will be victorious. And it will be quite frustrating for a man to begin to pour and refine, only to find out that he's working against what the blood father actually wants. It creates a rift. It will create a rift.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that, if you were in a house, if you were in a family, for instance, and, one of your children may want to explore a different religion or a spiritual upbringing or whatever, and the other one something different, I think it'd be okay to acknowledge it and work through it with them, have that conversation, but they still have that grounding of that overarching culture that they come from. So like, we're not saying that you can't learn other things and be, just have that exploration, but you still have that rootage in your culture.
Okay, so I'll go on, because I think the truth is we've covered a lot of this even in the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's very layered. It is important for a man to properly vet the situation, as in many cases, a prospective woman will immediately tell you that the father is not involved in the lives of the children or is ambivalent to the welfare of those children. Do not be fooled, right? And that vetting comes through the courtship. It starts there, right? Right?
Yes. We with you.
Or maybe before that, right? No, it's not going to happen before that. It would be in the courtship. It would be in that courtship. That
Wouldn't it be before if the families, are having,
Right.
in some situations, it could be.
Right.
It could be before.
If not before,
Right.
it would definitely be during courtship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the dialogue, because perhaps the man who's even considering courtship with such a woman would want to actually have a dialogue with the father of the children.
Right.
You know, or anything. So, but I'm not a man, so I couldn't even begin to imagine. But yeah.
And someone spoke to it earlier too, indicating that it makes sense that the man would obviously have that conversation with, you know, one father to another, or one man to another, exactly.
All right, let's see. Brother Zach coming up with us. I may have to chunk that join up as an L. Say I made a bad decision to start over. Just make sure I don't mess up the second batch like I did with the first.
There you go. Wipe that slate clean, right? Right.
And I mean, as a man, you have that option. You got that option to do so. They see you, Deidre, walking across the stage.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. But we're still here. We got lights.
We almost got cut off.
She made sure that we continuously have lights, and so we appreciate you, sis. We are appreciating.
Please like, comment, and share.
Yes, right.
She will walk to it too.
Like skulls.
All right. Let me tell you, once Babylon have a grip on your youth, it's a wrap. You'll spend 20 years to convince your New World Order children that you have value while boycotting your divine purpose. And that's why you want to make sure, well, first, again, it starts in that courtship and that mating process that you're making, that you're mating with proper mates. And you catch them young, that they're there and they're under your headship throughout their life so that there won't be any influence from Babylon.
Can I highlight two? I know you read Brother Zach's statement when he says he would have to chalk that up to an L and say, I think he says, say that he made a bad selection or bad decision and would have to start over. Just make sure he doesn't mess up the second batch. And so, can you share with us, is that an indication? Are you saying that you would let go of those youth and move on?
And
Right.
and why? What would be the cause of that? Because I would imagine that would be because of an inconsiderate mother. You know, someone who is not willing to, you know, give those children back to their head. I would imagine. So yeah. Why?
Like there's rift and confusion.
Right.
And,
Right.
Yes. Because I have heard and seen some of that before. You know, there are men who are willing to do this, walk away from the situation because, you know, you have a woman who cannot be controlled, right? So it just becomes,
And then the unfortunate part to that is then the narrative can now be created or the story. Oh, she's not here.
right.
Yeah, daddy don't love you and da 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 da. And it's like, you know what you were doing.
Disobedient.
You knew what you were doing.
Usurping. You know.
Or not doing.
Right.
Which is why the Anuwe indicates that the man should, if possible, speak to the man himself, right? The children should always be raised under the righteous ruling of their blood father. So that conversation has to, see, I just worked in the last sentence.
You weaving it together. No, weave it together.
Right, but it's you know, like, I think it's so crucial how that statement, that share, right, that story that you gave to us, Deidre, is a part or a piece of a story, because that woman could be creating that experience on the back end and using it in the courtship to say, oh well, yeah, no, you're not really involved, but you know, so the man is able to discern, and so if he's able to speak to the father, then, you know, all of those balls hiding,
Mhm.
hiding all of the information and creating crazy situations.
Do any of you women here on this panel and out there in YouTube land, do you consider yourself to be crafty?
Crafty?
Or yeah, crafty. Has there ever been any moments where you kind of manipulated the truth? You know, they say there's more than one side of the story.
Right.
So anytime a woman can come in and say, "This is what happened," he doesn't want to take care of him. He is doing this and this and that. Or they may fabricate things because maybe the father is stepping up and saying, "I want to take care. I want my children." But again, it's that puppet show where it's no, I want to have control over everything and him. You know, so like we have to remember just some of the characteristics of a woman. You know, everyone, of course, those who may not come up in within a culture, a righteous culture, they are westernized and have these other ideas from the outside that brings in that imbalance and dishonesty and other things that make situations kind of, you know.
Well, I think to answer that crafty question, I'll speak for all of the panel and the women in YouTube land and just say that it's just a natural characteristic for us as women to be crafty. And if you think about it, and I didn't have to think about it because Chief has actually shared this example, right? He's touched on the fact that as women created to be mothers, we have to be crafty because when that baby brings home that hard art project, you have to say, baby, that is the most beautiful thing. Your performance was amazing.
Yes.
It gave us all life, honey. And so that's crafty. But what you just shared is a woman who is a liar, right? So that's not a crafty woman.
Right.
Because I would liken crafty to like someone who can kind of take yarn and make something, right? And you're not necessarily making something.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you can make that.
Playing on the words.
But
what you're doing now is crafty.
It's crafty.
What you're doing now is crafty because you're playing on the word. But
I will say this, in a segment that Chief did, he said it plain out, women are liars.
Right.
Because of the same scenario that you said. So whether you're crafty, cunning, it's all the same thing. It's how you direct it and what you are doing within that. Are you using it to usurp, a man's authority, or are you using it to encourage and build up a child? So it's all about that intention of what you're fitting into, and
So when a man understands the manipulative nature of a woman, then that's why it's no. I need to go talk to this man and see what's really going on.
initially, it should be no one. Let me set it up and let me have you know.
Right.
You have to remove yourself and let men do men things. So.
There you go.
Because it's nice to say, like, women are water, but you also have to remember what water can do.
Yes.
Erode.
When Urban say, Urban, I'm wearing you down, baby. I'm wearing you down.
That same water that nurtures and sustains you can also drown.
Grow.
So I vote for Sister Masha to read Chief's next comment, just because I think it needs a little special something on it.
Which one? Oh
Have to share
no.
your screen.
It's at 9:09.
9:09.
That's what we're up to.
I don't see no time marks on mine. I don't know what y'all looking at.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll try to see.
All right. Well, and then
Let me
Okay,
tell
no
you.
worries. If you can read it, that would be good because I can't. I don't.
he said, y'all. Okay, I'm gonna try. He says, y'all keep it going and stop acting like you have something to do after this. It's survive. Serve the people them now. I just felt like Sister Masha would have done that a little better.
You did good.
I'm only partially accredited for that.
That's all right. Maybe I could see a little bit from here.
Alright,
Or maybe one of our sisters can, if you can see,
Yes.
because I no longer have
Oh, to
access
read the chat?
Yes.
I have one from, I think we're here, Brother Zach, I don't think we read this. Raising children in a split camp is like playing a game of Russian roulette. It's a high probability that them joints will be screwed up. It takes a real man to be a gamma man. Cause oh no, I'm sorry.
Oh my
He
goodness.
said- No, Antonio says it takes a real man to be a stepfather.
Yes.
Okay, so that Emma Precious read that. Yeah, Brother Lowe, he says, I can't see the situation ending well, so I might have to accept the loss and start over with better earth to cultivate and produce. All right. Wait, did you have some coconuts today, Chief? See, Chamonix, she coming with the coming with the bacon.
Bang, bang.
Right. I saw that it takes a real man to be a stepfather. You see the BS? Trying to trick you into pandering. It takes a real man to see this value in the face of the Creator. Give thanks for that. If I didn't get the pleasure to make them, why should I have the burden to raise them? Zach Latimer, he is our resident poet, as you all can see. I was listening to one of your mixes, DJ Shan. The whole outfit changed colors and little net holes. Was I supposed to read it? Wait,
No. Just, move on.
Yes, I do agree, Sister Chamonix. This is a great build on a touchy subject. It is a very touchy subject. I mean, I would have appreciated to hear different views upon it, like because we're all in the same culture, so we're given the same point of view. So I really wish we had that, that opposing views or more questions, just so we can dig deeper into it and build some more understanding on it. We don't want to scare them. We don't want to should knight them. Come on, big you. Where
is she reading now?
I think she
It's
made
here.
that.
I can't get down.
Where's the first Shema?
I know. I'm just
Don't
sitting
get
here
us in
calmly
trouble.
waiting for the
Okay.
what's next.
I loosened up now. Y'all shouldn't have gave me the
Tighten
mic.
up a
Y'all
little bit.
shouldn't-
Bring out Peggy.
But no, seriously, it's in the chat.
Well, who is the culprit?
It's in the chat.
Who said it?
Who said that?
Who
Hold
said
on,
it?
please.
Oh my God. Now.
Oh, brother.
You see it, Brother Lowe?
Okay, Brother
Yeah,
Lowe.
Brother
Okay,
Lowe.
okay.
Yeah.
Make it more metaphorical. Brother Lowe says. All right, we're cutting up, y'all.
Okay.
So let's see if we have any more responses to the questions that we posed.
Okay, Chief is responding to that. So we did have another question. Maybe we can pose that one too.
Right.
And the reason why, and I don't know if this one is going to be the same thing. The reason why, because a lot of brothers that are in the chat, they don't have children.
Right.
So they can't really give, the type of response that would be appropriate, being that they are.
But they must know what they
Yeah.
want, and they must know what they need. So I think they can answer in that.
Okay.
They must know if they're willing to do something or not. And I think Brother Lowe spoke to it, and
Did
Brother
you-
Zach spoke to it
Did
as
you
well.
ask that one?
I did
So
not
this one
put
might-
it in the chat.
Yeah, this one might be appropriate for that, as far as the willing part. Brothers, are you willing to be charged with the responsibility of rearing the children of another man? And do you think this may breed imbalance? Okay. Yeah, so while we get those responses,
We keep going through the chat.
yeah, we'll keep going through the chat and make sure we get everything, because
Chief asked a crafty question.
I like it.
Chief asked a question. Let me read it.
Love.
Yes, read loud.
Okay,
Loud.
crafty question. Do you women realize that by your 20s, we see through your craftiness and pretend to accept it because once we detect it, we detest you and plan to redeem our wasted time in the giant?
Oh.
Well, there you have it.
What we think is crafty is being seen by that knowledge that, that seen. So
That light,
that light
pretty much.
up in the
Trying to keep
darkness.
it in the dark, but it's gonna come to the light. So DJ Cham, just drop another mic.
The mic is rolling
Please.
on the floor. There's a dent in the floor.
And I thought this was funny. So Ema Aquia says, so please note the question I asked wasn't to get my sisters heated. We weren't. We remained cool. We remained cool the whole time.
Cool and fresh.
Yes, cool and fresh. But we just wanted to break it down because there will be women who are not Anu who will watch this or who are watching this, whether they're in the chat or not. And we just want to be clear. So I know you threw that out there, to kind of incite a riot. So
Break it
Right,
down so
right,
for every
we
be
shall.
broken, So, there you have it.
Anymore, I can't see anything.
I know, it's so much. I don't want to lose myself.
Okay, so Chief then
Thank
says, they're not heated by those questions, Ema Aquia.
Thank you.
They know you're not serious anyway. You've been taught way better than that. You're just asking for those who are low-key feminists. Indeed. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. She said.
To beat the grass
And
and wake up.
Chief
Okay.
responds.
And we're gonna deliberate, so that everyone can see, whoever's listening can see. Truth.
Absolutely.
Chief response to Brother Zach. This is a hard talk. It is a low vibe talk. Men of value should obtain righteous, virginal women. Anything outside of that is grace and scholarship for concubines.
Another mic on the floor.
Again.
Again.
We're going to use that.
Again. You know we're gonna steal it, right?
Chief Yuya also responds, if you split and do not have full control of your youth, you have already let them go. In this culture, it's often dangerous for a real man to insert his authority into the mix. Okay. With a retracted message from Kwanda, I'm interested in knowing what it was.
Yes, because I see you said something. Also, the willingness to submit that is still required of me when children are born. You should already be submissive before the children are even planned.
You should be submissive right now.
Now,
Right.
period.
And you had to submit to
They're a sheet.
the man that you laid down there.
But I'm just going to say this, right? Because we've touched on it and shared it when we've done the womb builds and that we've done here on YouTube. Within Anu, there is a covering initiative. So I'll say that, Sister Kwanda, you are already being submissive because you're coming under the headship of your covering. So that's where it begins. That's the third sheet.
Yes,
So,
third sheet.
so we're gonna start it at the beginning, which is now.
All right. Brother Zach, he says, I've seen men become Disney dad and can't really discipline their children because of what is filled in their head by their mother. Instead of going back and forth, it's best to chalk it up as an L. He likes that. So, is that in response to the question as far as if you're willing to be charged with responsibility?
Sister
You know,
Martha
so this
asked
is about-
earlier about
okay.
taking an L. I think that was his
Okay,
response.
okay. All right.
And that
And Chief, he reiterates that this is definitely a hard talk. In response to Brother Zach, it's a low vibe talk, and I think you guys covered that already.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's a lot. I'm still trying to catch up. And Zach, he wants to be around other men of value, so he doesn't have to think that they're crazy.
You have to speak louder.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, so everyone can hear me. I
Yes, of
apologize.
course. And
Yes.
greetings, Christopher Magneto. We have, I just want to greet all of the newcomers, those who are just joining in, like, share, and subscribe. And if this is your first time tuning in to Shema Anu is hosted every Friday to open the Sabbath, and it's held with either brothers or sisters from the New Life Global Ministries. So, subscribe and hit the bell for the notification. All right? So you could join all the good stuff happening. You can hear some truths and jump in the chat and share and ask, sensible questions.
I love it.
Sounds good.
And make a point to say that we are getting some responses to the question, and I'm
All right.
digging it. Brother Lowe, he says, I'm not willing to be that charge. I was stupid enough to do it once. I ain't doing it again. I ain't care if God, not God, but God told me to leave her.
Are you like acting out?
She
It's just
did.
below, though.
And I told you I would always laugh. I'm trying to get his voice. I'm gonna get his accent down.
What I'm saying, I'm talking about.
No, I'm
That's
talking
how
about.
we gotta add that in there, you know what I'm saying?
You know.
Yeah. Brother Antonio says, growing up around people who were raised by other men while trying to maintain a relationship with their biological father was hard to watch. There was a void that can never be filled by what their mother deemed to be enough. And Shikuya adds, he has reared many children, sired by other men. I wouldn't recommend it. If the sister is widowed with reasonable justification, then that could be considered.
Period.
Because that comes with a lot of stressors, the things that are, that we find in the honor way of why they have to go through a lot of hills and valleys in order to get to the truth, in order to get more control and get past that puppet master, yeah.
Well, as Chief has said in the past, right? Chief did that, so you don't have to go through that. And quotas.
Yeah, right. So, Brother Lowe, she experienced it for you, so you can
You skip that part.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Christopher Magneto, being a product of a split home, I would not take on the responsibility of another man's child. Observing the craftiness of my mother taught me how to pick sides when I wanted. There was never a true allegiance to either side.
And then that's that void that you just spoke about, Sister Deidre. That void then becomes, Babylon just sucking you in and planting where, your parents were not able to.
And causing that
They
internal
coming in,
conflict
right?
and confusion, that
Right.
cultural.
Right.
You leave room for the serpent to be like, oh, you came from 93?
Right. Right. Absolutely.
Within Babylon, raising someone else's children can be perilous because of how women and incentivized
Got it.
to rule over their parents. It takes one visit to the school counselor and a lie to jam you up. Don't break down.
That's how early they learn. That's how early they learn to use that craftiness that you're talking about.
Incentivized.
Yeah.
Like that. And I would like for Brother Zach to give us the meaning of that word, incentivized. Yeah, I'm coming up. We got a 20-second delay. You got time, brother. That's my kid and ain't yours. Says it all for me. I ain't going.
That's for the low.
Right. Now we know when you're going into She don't even quote. Everyone knows she quotes. No, she doesn't.
Quotation marks.
But you have to understand, Brother Lowe speaks it
So shout out to Brother Lowe.
Yeah,
If you all don't watch his
Yeah.
movie breakdowns or understandings, you should check it out. He's really engaging.
Yes, and that is Thursdays, Young Kamichi at 8:30 p.m.
On Enlightenment and Transformation Channel.
Let's
See?
do the
Teamwork.
teamwork.
Add him. And we're almost through the chat.
Oh wow! Yes, this is awesome. Emma Quia says, "I appreciate the clarity of women who have children and aren't mated and how it should be handled." Peace to the sovereigns, peace to Anu and all that's in the chat. Right, Brother Zach? Being around men of value is the litmus test when you bring a woman in. A righteous woman would love your brotherhood. The devil would abhor them.
Pause.
And because the devil's never gonna, it's like, me, mine, you're mine. Be with me all the
That's
time.
it.
Have no goals, have no vision. Don't go out there and build and cultivate, an expansion of our community. Just stay here and watch television with me. That's
Netflix and
wasteful.
chill.
How about that?
Okay. I like that question that you posed, Brother Zach. And of course, it would be to the men as well. But he asked if it takes a collective group of men to raise one boy to a man, then why shouldn't he raise someone else's child? Because we're all about community, right? And the community is within our culture, and we all take part in it.
I'm gonna
We
leave.
all. I like that.
I was gonna say, well, is the other man part of your community? Do they share your culture?
Well, that was the assumption that I took. So, but that is a good question.
So that's for the brothers, right? So the brothers are gonna deliberate on that. Good question. Okay.
I apologize, Brother Lowe. It's just when I read your words, I just hear your voice. And that's what I'm doing.
Yes, speak up.
Yeah, speak up.
Emma Quia says, where does that leave the woman with children who need to be mated, yet the man doesn't want to share the womb? How would she be directed or covered?
I think it doesn't mean that there will not be someone who does not mind taking that in, but then you have to, that means that there has to be intention behind it and it has to be done correctly. Again, what is the situation and has there been honesty about what the situation is with the biological father of those children? But what we're saying, it doesn't mean that there will not be a man that is willing to take that on.
And it also requires a sober assessment of that woman who is in that situation as well, and when it comes to a mate.
And I'm sorry, you might even say something.
No.
I was gonna say there's another piece of reality. If that's gonna happen, are you willing to understand that man will now dictate what the culture is and what that looks like? So that may mean that the child or children will have to be fully embrace the new culture, right? Because again, this entire passage that we're reading, actually, the third sentence focus. But I was trying to go back to the idea that a woman is absorbed into the homestead, and she is to it says that a man rules over his household, and the woman that's coming into the homestead will assimilate to the culture and the cultural perspective. So, and that is inclusive of the children that she comes with. If she's graced to be, accepted and welcomed into the home. So I think that's a realistic part that we have to consider. The lifestyle may change. And it might be a complete turnaround, about face turn. That may be what has to happen for them to be apart and to be a part of the
And I have a question. Does the age of the children matter? You know, I know there are some women who have young children, and there are some women who have adult children. So it's still, you know, you're still a mother. So does the age of the children matter in these circumstances?
That's a question for the brothers.
Brothers, sisters.
No, I'm just curious.
Anyone, because you know, let's just say there is a woman who has children, but the children are 18, or you know, or about to be grown, or yeah. So I just wanted to know how does that, what would that look like for older children? Yeah.
Something came to mind for me by reading that question was your emphasis on need. So with you needing that mate and you know that you need to be directed and covered, how are you approaching your courtship situation? So are you putting your nose up or shrugging off men who you are not necessarily interested in, who may actually want to court you, but maybe you're not interested in them? So you have to consider your options. So you can't be picking and choosing if you know that you're coming into the situation where you're not necessarily the most desirable.
That virginal aspect, closest to that virginal aspect.
I mean, and I know Chief does give a response, Emma Queer. So what I'll just offer is the idea of just a cautionary tale again, right? So this is the position that you don't want to be in, right? To everyone who isn't in this position today. So this is where you don't want to have to be. But if you wind up in it, and I think she touched on this earlier in the chat, then it is highly likely that you will be a junior wife, right? Or perhaps a concubine. And so getting comfortable in that being the reality or the potential reality. And then I know Chief goes into, you know, or perhaps, you know, being mated to a lesser man, but I'm sure somebody's going to read that.
I didn't get there yet. There's a response to Brother Zach. He said, it takes a village mantra. It's not an excuse to produce children recklessly. The first village is the mother-father dynamic. If not present, we have a community spark. Brother Ramon adds, there was a time in my life where I would engage women with children because I was raised by a man who wasn't my father. I thought it was giving back. Charity. I wasn't trying to be Emma Queer Chief responds, she accepts that she may be with a lesser man because a man of means does not share his queen. It is about humility and accepting your causes. Sober assessment is necessary.
You have a hashtag.
Hashtag.
Uh-oh.
Hashtag Sister Manera Brother Low Impression.
And I promise
You know what? You're going to go home and practice that and come back with something powerful, sis. I believe in you.
Believe in me, because I can do it.
I know you can.
And I will. Just wait and
You
see.
can fly.
Just wait.
Fly. All right. Look, and just like that, we lost track of the
Oh,
chat
man.
again.
that was easy.
Just like
I
that.
found myself
Behind again.
I found myself loving the child and hating the mother, says Brother Ramon. So now, no. Desire only to rear my own children.
Wait a minute. You skipped over
Did I?
Aki Zach's request for his refunds?
No.
Did you really? How many refunds does he think he gets?
Oh, I thought Antonio. Okay, but so both of y'all don't like it?
He wants his money back.
So sounds like a challenge to me.
Money
All
back.
right.
I think
Or
that's
for
because
the
you asked him
impression.
to define something.
Oh.
Oh.
He wants his money back. For
Incentivize.
That's an inside joke, y'all.
Okay, I got it now. Got the joke. That's the game, Brother Ramon Lodman. Half of us have had porous mothers, so we are simp highlighted, pathetic of porous queens. We can't let childhood dysfunction dictate our righteous adulthood.
Man, drop again.
Hashtag that one.
Somebody put that in my You gotta say it like that.
Again.
I appreciate how y'all clowning us, and we sitting here reading this. We got the brothers over here clowning me.
And we all have glasses.
Hey.
In the back.
Y'all are visionaries. Y'all are. I love it.
Are they visionaries?
Hey, wait, whoa.
They got extra
We got
layers
that
of
extra
vision.
layer, that's right.
Right.
That's why.
As we squint, right?
Right.
All right, we're almost there.
We almost there. Okay. All right. Chief, you got asked frequently, Brother Zach, that sister doesn't submit to a direction of a village. We can't deny the fact that many females chase males away and then lean on the village when struggle tells.
That narrative.
Yeah, the victim.
This is what happened for me.
Crafting
What
that
happened?
story.
What happened was I wasn't listening.
Period.
It reminds me of the movie Parenthood, all the dysfunction. Would it be a man acting from a sense of lack or deficit to take on a female with children? Asked Brother Zach.
That's a good question. I think Chief's question before, his answer before about the lesser man probably answers that, like, yeah, but that's a good question.
Okay, and he asked, or does one look at it saying that I have been shown grace in my life, so everyone should be entitled to it? Were you shown grace so that you continue to make bad choices? The age doesn't matter, Sister Kashia.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, sorry. The age does matter, Sister Kashia, but if the children are older, she is older. If she is still young, then she probably made some poor decisions early on. So still, grace and humility are needed.
Good things.
Good things. Aquia, a woman who needs to be mated and knows she needs to be mated will be because that knowledge will make her humble. Some need to be mated because they want a live-in servant or sponsor. Sponsor. Wow. See, I'm thinking, you know what I'm saying? Thinking about all that responses, like, yeah, that makes sense.
And with that one, the emphasis on that knows, right? Because I can only imagine that one of the reasons that it would be in all caps is because it is that knowing that you need to be mated that's going to bring that humility, right? It took me back actually to the Woman of Good Understanding, how she fell off of her, I don't know if it was a horse or a donkey. I'm gonna say donkey. But she fell, to the ground and just began to plead with David because it was clear that this is what she needed to do and she knew what was needed. So in this, for that question, if you are that woman, then you have to know the humility that you need come with in order to be needed.
And also that knowing comes from being poured into because what is knowing is knowledge, is man. So that's coming into under the understanding of where we're at as women and acting on that from that knowledge, that patriarchal standpoint coming down.
Our beautiful Emma Sequoia shares what you sisters are sharing highlights the importance of why who we choose to mate with is the most important decision a woman can make. The results of a broken home are disastrous to everyone
Absolutely.
involves.
Involved.
You want to know who's dramatic? Like, who's dramatic among us? Among us.
I know, it sounds like a narrator from
Involved. Where did your mind just kind of settled in? Give thanks for that.
Everyone involved is highly effective. And Chief, he let you guys know that wearing glasses, you know, it's vintage. We let you know.
I like vintage things.
Top shelf.
Top shelf. Okay. Finally. Okay.
It's all good. You know, we come from someone who, you know,
VSOP.
wears glasses.
And who's also vintage now? Vintage much?
She said it. I didn't
It's a
say it.
question. It was a
I
question
didn't
mark.
say it.
I'm one here.
Right.
Totally uninvolved.
I don't know how I got here.
Here, come on.
Involved.
And you're in.
I'm in, but I know I won't be saying certain things, y'all. Okay, where are we?
We're right here.
Top tier speakers?
Mm-hmm.
It seems females only realize that they need a man when they see how difficult it is to raise a child without the direction of a father.
That desperation aspect.
Right, and just to make the distinction that would be an appropriate perspective for the westernized woman, right? So, being that Ima Akuya posed that question, the need that I believe, and of course you can clarify, Ima, is from based on, as you said, Sister Kashia, an understanding or an understanding about how you even qualify to be a woman, right? You need headship. So it would come from a more righteous drive at this point for us, Anu, within Anu.
Hashtag be honored.
Brother Antonio says Sister Manira needs the bouncing ball when she reads.
You know what? Keep going.
Yeah, moving on
1,
nicely.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11, 12.
I can't even hang it. I won't even hang it. Okay.
Zach says if a woman has unruly children, does that say something about? If a man has unruly children, does that say something about him when your women are choosing a mate?
Yeah.
I think I would beg the question, what were you pouring into the mother that did not get through to the children?
Right. That hierarchy.
So therefore there is some looking, how does it go? Being able to see the beyond your eyes. Listening with your eyes.
Yeah.
Right. Listening with your eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like this. And like that. Clean them off. You know, but I wonder, right? Because if the man is that directed and you know that one who's stirring and directing things, then maybe what's lacking perhaps is that nurturing piece, right? Because if the man has taken those children under his headship appropriately, so but he hasn't taken on a mate just yet. Maybe that's what's needed there, but I couldn't speak. Yeah, I couldn't speak eloquently on that one.
But you could also add water seeks out its own level, right? So what was happening at that time, that you create, that you courted, or whatever, unintentionally created, whatever it is, courted, had children, created, populated, whatever, with this woman, and maybe it could be like there's a separation because there was an evolution somewhere, but at the time you were complementary, so there is some some seeing with the eyes that needs to be had.
Yes.
The word unruly sticks out to me because now it becomes, is this discipline over culture, or being cultured and having etiquette. And so if it's discipline, then we know who rules out the discipline.
Yeah.
Right? And discipline will, manners make a man. So discipline.
Manners make a man. I like
Yes,
that.
manners make a man, right?
Yes. This will be reused, and we're not giving credit.
But I guess I'm pulling out the unruly because because of the question and trying to get to where, like, what would lead us to unruly children? Is it the etiquette alone, or is it discipline, or both?
But a man who's coming into a situation with culture, then he won't necessarily be in a position to have those unruly children because they would have that
That's right.
Culture outline.
And then even a man with culture would be the type of man who would take the time to go through that courtship process.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you are a woman, then that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that righteousness in that process, not just, again, going out and just mating with whoever
Listen
shows
with your
up.
eyes. You know, it's really about
Y'all.
All right, we're almost there. We're almost
Yes,
there.
We was there, but
they got more
Yes.
colorful comments.
Is that colorful comment?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
We
she's
missed
just
out.
laughing. It's not to say all unwed mothers should be trashed, but it's like romancing someone who just who you just saw walk out of a drug rehab center. You'd be very cautious, and there's a 95% chance it will not work out.
Mm-hmm. Or the meth clinic.
Okay. Random domestic.
That is very
Okay.
specific.
Yeah, it's very. Okay.
Don't do math.
Yes, she does give the best examples. That is very true. Brother Zach, are you referring to a man who has retained ownership over his children and they do not respect his authority? Aquia responds with she mentioned the woman needing a man, it was from the perspective of Anu culture and how we were created to function as a family.
I
Okay. This ain't the color.
See, told you.
Hold on.
Hold
Hold on. I'm just gonna say it regular because y'all want that.
Don't do it.
Go ahead.
This ain't the color purple. My children ain't gonna be throwing no rocks upside no sister's head. If,
Okay.
That's
Okay.
if anything, I'm unruly because they will get beats by Bible. Anytime, any place, I discipline.
discipline.
The children.
I mean, y'all have never heard this saying
Beats
before.
by
Who can hear will feel.
What?
Who
Who
can't
feels
hear
it
will
knows.
feel.
Oh,
Yeah.
not exact word. Oh, yeah.
The children, top tier speaker says the children can be unruly due to what the mother is feeding them. The father may be pouring right teachings, and the mother could just be resistant or rebellious.
Well, yes.
I just thought of something. What he
I know because
will feel.
So it's pretty much like if you're not listening.
Is it like a
Right.
hard head? Is
Yeah.
a soft butt?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was
She
thinking.
gave-
Like,
she gave the other side of the
40
water.
seconds leader.
yeah, I was. It was. I was like,
It's like the other side of the water. Wait a minute. Recalculating.
Calibrate. Is that a hard head?
Compute.
It's all butt?
yes, that's exactly what it is. That's what it is.
That's the American version.
Right. It is. Okay, it is.
any situation from Zach, would it say something about his choices and leadership? I'm just wondering if they view that as a knock or just that they really like the man.
I guess the
yeah,
one
that's-
he's talking about.
Is that another part of the question? Oh, okay.
It's response to something Brother Antonio asked previously. Yeah. Chief Yuya says unruly children mean there's no rule. Even if the mother is wayward, a real man's rule will either correct her or repel her. so the children will act right for fear of their father's command. I know I'm scared of that.
I'm gonna tell you that.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you that. Don't do that.
Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. If you don't listen, you're gonna feel.
Oh,
I don't know.
No.
This is a Bohemian version, so that's why she did that.
That is.
Oh boy.
That was not
I did good.
Bahamian.
I did good.
Bahamian.
Well,
It ain't Bahamian.
We
It
didn't
ain't
know
Bahamian because
hashtag.
I ain't Bahamian. But I'm saying you
Don't
got
hit with the
what
One.
one
Yeah.
few.
One.
But that ain't what he wrote because he's Bahamian. So he didn't say that. He said you're
Oh,
going.
yeah, the
Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
I see.
Thank you.
In the southern one, no, I'm kidding.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Yes, it is fun. Soft, weak males always have unruly children. Male teachers, pastors, and conscious misfits always have crazed children because they are effeminized and disconnected from the role of the husband,
Yes.
the bond of the house. It did sound like the Brad Pitt. I know the Brad Pitt. The main accent you're talking about. Was it Brad Pitt or was it what was it?
No, it was
No.
Interview with a Vampire, I think.
What's his name?
Johnny Depp.
That too.
It was the other guy.
When
Oh my
Brad Pitt
gosh.
did Interview with a Vampire, he did that same accent
Did
that
he?
you did.
Oh.
The guy who was in Blood Diamond, the white guy.
Leonardo
that
DiCaprio.
one. Oh, he was horrible.
That was supposed to be a South African
That was
accent.
bad.
Oh,
No,
That was
I
horrible.
think that he was South African.
Yeah. Either way, it was bad.
So, I wanted to pull on Noir Male just a little bit. So if you're not familiar, Noir Male is another book written by Chief Yuya. And so, okay, I'll pause.
Something in the chat.
Some kind of woo-hoo going on in the chat, guys.
Go ahead, Mr. Marsha.
But the point I wanted to make was directly connected to Chief's last statement about soft, weak males, because Noir Male really highlights the way the secular world programs or reprograms men to think that soft, weak, non-husbanding role, the extracting of the disciplinarian from them is actually the standard that they should be working toward. And that moves them away. It moves men away from. And this is not me saying it, but this is me highlighting that this is what Noir Male presents, right? Some of what Noir Male presents, and it gives a really great rundown as to the programming of men who function in the secular world, but those who are striving toward that their divine function.
Absolutely.
I give thanks
Yes.
for that last piece of wisdom that you shared with us. I do want to alert you all that we may cut off soon, but this has been a very enjoyable Shema. I give thanks for allowing me to do this and be a part of this whole process with Shema. I look forward to doing it again and reading better.
You're gonna add Bob.
You got some comments
No
on
accent. Yes.
I'm coming back with a better accent and everything. But we are to the end of our battery, but also the end of our comments. And Brother Antonio ends with, he cringes when he hears fathers pleading with their children to behave. And we ask that all of you are behaving and in alignment and being conscientious that it is the Shabbat, so we will all be in our internal method of
We ain't trying to dip.
Oh,
But
man.
have me running. They got charges. It's about to die. It is on the charger.
If it cuts off, we are going to be obedient and reflect the light that is being shown upon us, and we will come right back. Give thanks.
It's because you did it on purpose. They're trying to dip on you.
Look, as she scurries off to go.
Moonwalks.
Right.
while Sister Deidre figures out what's happening with the charging apparatus, we're actually going to just continue with the dialogue. Something that we can consider is how we as women can really share this information. And of course, I'm just speaking as a woman, right, to the sisters. How we share this information, how we encourage. I'm sorry, I'm being distracted by the inner workings of the charge. Is it plugged in though? How we can share this information and the importance of discussing this, amongst ourselves, but also sharing it with our people, our relatives, because it's really, really essential that we remind folks of the cautionary tale of what's happening. And really try to repair, correct, reform as much as we can, particularly in this dispensation of space and time.
Yes, good, thanks.
So he just gave us a nice story about his grandfather and how he used to show some discipline to the young children, how his grandfather used to come in the room and cock his pistol when they make too much noise. My father would just snarl. Yeah, we kind of.
We falling off the chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we all
Yeah.
did.
There you
There you go.
Now she's trying to knock the iPad down just so we can get off of here. We got it charged, but
The iPad is
this is
relaxing.
fun, y'all.
We're relaxing.
Right.
This
Just
is
lean.
this is
Wait.
yeah. So this
Gonna lean
is
this way.
Shema after hours.
What?
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
Why have to be something negative?
Let's read the story. Let's read the story.
That was the story.
Oh, that's it? For goodness, but everybody shut up after that.
I can relate to that, brother.
Yes.
My grandfather, he once had it wasn't necessarily a shootout, but they fought. He fought my cousins and uncles and stuff. It wasn't no joke. It's like if you're disrespecting anything under his house, under his ruling, then he's going to assert his authority. There was no games played when it came to that man. Indeed.
And I find that even in my observation growing up, being reared in the Caribbean, when the mothers will always speak 10 times.
Right.
The fathers walk in the room, story done. Right.
Barely a word.
Yeah, look,
barely
not
a
even a
word.
word. And they just have to come. And if they can't step in the room and affect change the way they want, all they have to do is just, this is the belt. They just walk in with the belt and put it on the table.
It's like, who on what?
Man,
Who on what?
Exactly. But while the mother has to repeat herself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
definitely.
why is she repeating herself? You heard.
Right. Exactly.
Chief Yuya, as we were raised the old-fashioned way, that's all. And I think a lot of us, we are of that age that were raised by a different breed of, or a different way of parenting than a lot of what we're seeing now. We didn't act up though. I can see that, Brother Ramon. I had an aunt that stabbed my uncle on 2 occasions. He whipped. And the P means property. I wasn't going to say that.
Well, she didn't use the diplomatic term for it, but
Well, I forgot my whole train of thought.
you did. Oh God.
Well, we in response to
Discipline.
Yes.
I just thought about the senior men when I was being reared, and there was a depth in their voice that when I think about it, I'm like, wow, even their voice like resonated. Don't you even think about it. I would like I can hear my grandfather right now like telling my my male cousins, to shut up. And there was such a bass in that shut up. It was like, you don't want to feel the bass of this box. So you better, as in punch, slap. But so you better just take the bass of this voice, like this voice box. And it's kind of different now. Like there are very few men that when I think about voices that are like that, there's that resonance.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
you're
almost
coming
like
from,
you actually feel
Right,
it.
you
Right.
feel it.
That rumble.
Like you feel it in your chest, like
Your mind and everything.
we came from a time where men were actually men. Nowadays, they're not being brought up the same way.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're trying to stay online, but they're just not.
well, they're soft, like you said, right?
They are.
They're soft.
Yeah.
There aren't any more questions. I think all of the brothers were able to address the ones that were asked previously, as well as the sisters. I did see something else pop up, so. Brother Cruz, he went to his uncle's on Saturdays. He did not allow us to play. If we did, we got punished. We had to farm and take care of the dogs all
That's
day.
Character building.
like strength and stuff right there.
Because he was looking to raise you guys like men and be out there playing on games.
Play.
It's time to get the work done. We got to hustle and we got to get it in. You can hear the
You know,
difference.
there's a Caribbean saying. I heard it.
Okay.
Play makes nay. So it's kind of like if you play around too much, you're gonna get into problems.
Okay.
So I broke it down.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So play makes nay. And if you think nay is like right. So there you have it from Ava Cruz.
You can hear the difference. Okay.
You know, I was just talking about I just wanted to speak really quickly about the resonance of the voice, you know. And I guess I could relate it to the didgeridoo. Have you ever heard the didgeridoo?
Yes.
That low, deep
Yeah.
bass song. It's like it's a primordial.
There you
Yeah. But it moves you. It's compelling. There's something that is very primal about it in a sense, and it really connects to us. And it is I don't know if it's that disciplinary aspect of that piece that it's a cueing system for us.
Yeah.
You know what? It's similar to what you said, Sister Marsha. There's a post that went around like a few years ago, maybe it was a year back, and a baby was fussy, and she only calmed down when the father did how the monks do the and it literally was like a soothing, and the mom would speak, and the only thing to get her was that bass, that resonance, and it's kind of it's primal.
It is primal. And it relates to what Chief Yuga said. He says you can hear the difference in music. No More Teddy P, Isaac Hayes, Barry White, or Lou Rawls. And it's this one artist, I don't know if you guys heard of him. He has songs like Babylon is falling. Y'all know that one?
Yeah.
Y'all know that?
Joked on right now.
I'm gonna stick beside him.
I'm gonna be like Marsha. I'm just sitting here.
And as you read through that, all I thought was Teddy P. Turn them off. Like that. That's all. It's like, okay. Okay.
Well, he asked more than one.
Where's the fuse box?
Asked more than one.
Where's the fuse box? Take them all off.
Asked more than one.
I don't want you to have to tell me again to turn the lights off.
Lights off.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is what happened.
Listen,
It's like the 10 o'clock hour. I'm getting goofy.
But for real, check out Babylonia.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
ain't got a plug. Any way you can.
On
Sing it, you gonna sing it.
I've been waiting for it. Come on.
You're gonna sing it. Okay. All right, before I get into any more trouble. Reverend Rollo, good love, new single.
Is that
Reverend
from Happy
Rollo,
Feet?
good love.
It sounds like
Is that
that.
Happy
I
Feet?
don't know.
Oh man.
It does sound like that.
Or is that Eve?
Reverend
It's
Rollo, good love.
Yes.
Give thanks.
Give thanks to you all. We see you in the chat. It's been a wonderful evening, and Tony will share how his father worked most hours of the day. Wait till your daddy gets home. Was like waiting to get walked to the electric chair.
Oh,
Right, what time?
Mhm.
What time is it coming?
The
always
day
comes
Let me
to
get
your
my
last
last
meal.
meal.
Always comes out early that day, too.
It is your last meal because you ain't eating for the next
No.
24 hours. It's
You
kinda-
can't eat. Your
He
stomach's
been
upset.
crying. Yes.
That's awesome. All right, so do you have any closing words? Anyone?
Well, I see a couple of shares toward the end. I think so. If you're at if you can access the 10, 23, 24 minute mark, I think some
Yeah, just one.
one. Oh,
Which one? Oh, that's a great consequence, Brother Cruz. Children have to know that mental mistakes lead to physical consequences.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was absolutely. I have to say, I enjoyed myself. A whole lot. And I always think about, like giving the medicine, but also delivering honey along with it. So it was good to have that balance of talking about a topic that can be, it can be a heavy topic, as she said, but at the same time, exploring it and really deliberating about the topic and, throwing in some good fun in there, right? I mean, how else would we open up our Sabbath? How else would we share amongst family, right?
Absolutely.
Edifying each other and making each other laugh and just, communing. So we appreciate all of you who have been in the space. You came in early, you came in midstream, you came in after. Leave a comment in the chat. Please, if you have any questions, place those questions in the chat, those sensible questions. And we will be happy to respond to them. Please share this video with a blood relative, family member, or a friend or co-worker, because it will expand their thinking around, courtship, having children, and the roles of the men and women in relationships. This is really important for us. And if you're interested in nation building, please go to anulifeglobal.org, right? anulifeglobal.org and register. Consider registering for the Anu Man orientation process, or the Anu Woman or Anu Womb orientation process, and being a part of Anu.
The Anu?
I would love to just say this is real. This is community. This is sisterhood. She can touch, right? But what I'm saying is this exchange is real. I think sometimes when women see other women come together in this way, there's that sense to kind of think, is that really how this is? And I just wanted to say, this is really how it is. And this is why it's important that you have community and that you come together so that you can have these experiences, because that's what being Anu is all about.
Yes. Know what I'm talking about?
Grow.
Got it.
No, that was good. But you got to do the I'm done. And then click it.
I'm done. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.